Everyone. It's a pleasure to welcome you to this evening's 7th Berlage keynote lecture by Vector Architects entitled Building, Intervening, and Connecting. It's a pleasure to have Donggun of Vector Architects give this evening's lecture. Based in Beijing, some of their canonical projects include the renovation of the Captain's House, the Seashore Library, and the Seizure Chapel. Professor Gunn was appointed the Plim Professor at the University of Illinois and has been teaching at Tsinghua University since 2014. The work of Vector Architects has been published by Casabella, the New York Times, A+U, Detail, Architectural Review, Domus, amongst other things. Tonight's lecture is part of our ongoing lecture series featuring internationally prominent architects, designers, and thinkers who are at the forefront of design discourse and innovation. We are pleased to have Professor Gong here virtually. We should say that because of the time difference in Beijing, the lecture has been especially pre-recorded for us. So, and we hope that at another moment we will be able to engage with question and answers, but following the lecture. But unfortunately, that will not happen today. So, thank you, and again, I'd like to thank Professor Gong, who has, due to the pandemic, we've rescheduled this lecture several times over the past year, and we're very glad that he was able to accommodate our invitation by pre-recording the lecture earlier today. So at any rate, thank you, and we look forward to seeing the work.
Hello, this is Gong from Vector Architects. We are a Beijing office, and thank you for inviting me to join this lecture series. Today I'm going to share some of our recent architecture projects. Now I'm going to share the screen. The title of my presentation today, Building, Intervening, Connecting. Well, I think it's a very unique experience to be an architect practicing in China because of the social situation today. And the key word, of course, for me is fast changing. Because of this fast speed, the drastic speed of this urban social transformation, it really creates a different kinds of tension, or you can call momentum, sometimes even crevice in different social aspects, physical, psychological, mental, systematic. So architecture or architecture practice in China, I don't think it's merely for the form, even the space or object that normally the architect would talk about, but it's really about a kind of energetic force can eventually engage and mediate different aspects of this entire society, and eventually to connect things together, many things together. People with people with nature, for example, and people with society, of course. I will start talking about my projects. The first one I like to show you is the Seizure Level, which we finished about 5 years ago. And in the very beginning, when the client and us trying to build this thing up, the fundamental target is trying to build a kind of physical space, but to be as a identity, to re-establish a kind of identity of the local residential compound. But the location is actually very unique. This was the first day I went to the site, and it's an overcast day. And the entire site is along the ocean. And as you can see, at that time, about 6 years ago or 7 years ago, it's still a very primitive coast. And the person in the middle of the picture is myself. So for me, this entire project, we started with a very authentic kind of thinking of architecture, how to build artificial space in front of this vast ocean environment, and to balance this artificial and nature, eventually to create this kind of unique experience in front of the ocean. Well, this is a Japanese artist, Hiroshi Tsujimoto. This is one of his very famous masterpieces. He took only this ocean horizon, but in different weather, different location, different time. But when you put them together, you can see how vivid and how diversified that this single line could be. It's really like a drama. And our building is actually in front of this drama. This is a very preliminary schematic sketch just showing you how we interpret the space in relationship with the air, the light, the view, the movement of human body, the time. So as I said before, this is a very kind of typical architecture creation actually in the beginning of the project. But later on, I experienced very interesting story after this building got built. This is a sectional model, actually was displayed in the Venice Biennale in 2018, and we were invited to the main international exhibition. And this entire model is actually cut into 3 pieces, and each part you can roll it left to right or backward to the front to let the visitor to be interactive with the model, to give them a deeper impression about the sectional quality of the space. And this is the eventual architecture floor plan. It's a very simple building, only about 450 square meters in terms of the scale. And we have double floor. The first floor is basically the entrance. And on this side is a big reading room, and it's actually double height. And on the other side, it's a series of supplementary program like a bar or a toilet, office, something like this. But on the second floor, this is again the big reading room, but we have a meditation space, which is for more private use, and outdoor deck to separate this activity room with the major program of this library because of the noise issue. And after the finish of the project, as you can see, it's really a kind of tranquil site ambience because there's no artificial intervention around the building. The building is really, we call this a lonely library. Right after the finish of the project, I will use a series of images to let you to have a feeling about the space and the architecture condition of this project. Yeah. But after only 3 or 4 years, along the coastline is already fully occupied by residential, commercial buildings, and this is actually one of our projects too. The lower part of the picture is a restaurant, very adjacent to the library, and that's why in the very beginning of my lecture I talk about the keyword, which is the fast changing, and this is the real experience for us as an architect. Again, let's go back to 5 years ago when there's no building around, and this is the east facade, which is facing the ocean. Another facade, which is towards the north. And along the building volume, we intentionally create some holes to connect the both sides of the architecture, the residential compound side, and together with the ocean side to create this kind of visual connection through the building. This is just different angles and different parts. And the first floor of the building, its entire wall is made of these pivot doors. So at the good weather condition, the door can fully rotate to open. So the entire building is become kind of a semi-outdoor indoor pavilion because we want to accelerate this cross air ventilation. And at the night, when the light comes from inside, you see this is the transparency of the building facade. That's another angle of the building, which is the entrance. So before you really go into the building, you have the opportunity to see through from a series of openings, and eventually you see a piece of the ocean. Maybe can give you a kind of curiosity when you walk along into the building. And this is the ceiling of the big reading room. At the roof, we cut almost 21 very small wind tunnel. At the same time, because of the angle, it actually can perform like a light well. At a certain time of the day, when the sun is parallel to the angle, there will be a small circular shadow on the floor. And because of this, the size and the depth of the tunnel, you can really feel the shadow is moving. That's the shadow on the floor, and it actually disappears very fast. Only can stay in the space for no more than 2 hours. In the winter, it will be even shorter, actually. Yeah. So the entire building is actually the floor is stepping because we want to increase the possibility that wherever you sit inside the space, when you look out to the ocean landscape, you won't be blocked by the people sit in front of you. So the stepping will give you this kind of opportunity. This is the corners of the reading room. So on the right part is the reading room, but on the left is the private meditation space. It's a darker, smaller scale, more intimate space, which actually juxtaposed with the much bigger reading room. And that's when you stay in the meditation space and look back to the reading room from very tiny holes. And on the top of this meditation space, it's a curved outdoor terrace. But when you enter this terrace from the opening on the left, you won't be able to see the ocean because of the height of the space, the depth of the space. But you can listen to the wave, to the sound of the ocean wave. This is the triangular outdoor deck when you look back to the reading room. But on the other side is this activity room. which can allow some panel discussion, meetings, or different kind of activities happening inside. And in this particular room, we have two skylights, which is facing both to the east and to the west. So at some certain moment of the day, you will actually have this feeling that two kind of tone, the color tone of the light at the same moment. When the light coming from the west, it's warm, it's brighter, but at the same time, the skylight facing to the east can bring some reflection light into the space, but with a colder tone. And that's the texture of the cast in place concrete with the temper grain. That's the twilight condition when you look at this building from the west and from the east. So the building turns out much more transparent at night. But this is not the end of the story. The building was built about 6 years ago, finished the construction process. I remember it's 2015 April and opened to public in 2015 May. So this is right after the opening. But in China, we have a very popular online media platform called Yitiao, One Piece. That's the name of the media. And they actually shoot a very short video, about 5 minutes, about these projects and post it in their platform. And all of a sudden, this building become a national hotspot online. And I can show you, this is the video clip, right? You still can find it online. And until last year, this one piece video has been viewed by, here is the number, 500 million times. So this is a dramatic kind of, how to say, a publicity of this specific piece of architecture. And I can show you what happened afterwards. So right after the post of this video, each day there was about 3,000 people will visit this building, but this building only have 70 seats as a, a community library. So at that moment, the pictures shows that the condition of the building. It's not like a library anymore. It's really like a train station almost. But right after this, the client actually applied a online reservation program, which actually give the building a kind of peaceful atmosphere. Because every day the maximized visitor will be limited to 300 people. So this is kind of a very effective way to control the, this kind of quality of the people using the space. And this is almost like what's going on today. It's still a lot of people, but it's actually in a reasonable scale. And we actually collected a series of pictures from different resources, sometimes from friends, from internet, from some photographers, to let you what really happened of this building through this 5 or 6 years. So this is some regular people who use the building as a space for finishing their homework, or just for some regular reading. And this obviously is a family with kids and some elderly people with kids. And this is the different status of the kids in the different corners of the space. And many people that when they go there, they don't necessarily reading actually, they just sleep. So this is some sleeping figures, and this is some construction workers, and these are some very fashionable uh, girls and friends and lovers, I guess. And these are series of artists, idols, celebrities who shoots commercials or different kind of activities. The cover of the magazines in the building, and on the lower part, this guy is Cui Jian, who is a rock music star, which is my idol actually when I was a very little kid. Models, actresses, very strange figures, artist, I guess, and many different kinds of activities, the panel discussions, seminars, lectures, and classes. This is, I guess, it's the fashion shows and maybe the lifestyle lectures. And sometimes they even transform this building into a place of learning dancing. This is the moment that they take out the tables and then the people can stand on the floor and learn dancing in the daytime. And parties in front of the building. This is the professional fashion show. They make this building as the walkway in front of the building, and inside the library is the changing room. And because of the stepping inside the building has been used as a theater or a musical hall very frequently, actually. This is one of the occasions that of this music concert. This is another one. Yeah. And they sometimes invited some minorities from different places in China and to have this singing concert. And this is the reading the poem by the famous poet in China. And this is actually a jazz player came from the United States, which is actually a very famous one, Ron Carter. So for me, this is really a kind of dramatic experience and somehow ironic, because we used to, in the beginning, try to create a very tranquil, poetic architecture space, but because of the current time, the characteristic of the social demanding, culture demanding maybe, and the status of the mass, the social mass in China, this building become a kind of very energetic place and allowing different kinds of activity and people to enjoy the space at the same time to be creative that how the space could be used. And this is far more beyond the architect's original design expectation. So, well, I think as an architect, I also learned quite a lot through this experience because it led me to realize that the layers of the possibility that how the architecture could relate to the society. All right, the next project, it's actually a hotel project. It's Alila Yangshuo. It's located in the very southern part of China. The red line showing you the location of the site. actually, the city where the project locates is very famous because of its beautiful landscape, mountain water landscape. And the river showing you in the image, the name is the Lijiang River. And the project site is right at the turning point of the Lijiang River. And this is a couple images. Actually, you can have a feeling that what the characteristic of the landscape. We call this karstic mountains, and it's almost like a vertical geometry, and with the beautiful rivers meandering through. And this is the spot of the project. So besides this very beautiful natural landscape, we have industrial heritage on the site, which is a sugar mill factory built about 40 years ago, around 1950, 1960. And this is actually a very interesting image. It was the cover of the military magazine in 1972, which is the year I was born. So you can have a feeling that how important this sugar mill factory was, because it's belonging to a county, to a very remote city, and but you know it's being published in the national military magazine. So in other words, this facility is kind of important at that time. But around 1980s, close to 1990, because China start promoting the environmental protection policy, so all the factories along the Lijiang River had to be shut down. So the sugar mill factory was one of them. Yeah, this is after the factory was closed, the condition of the building, but very fortunately, the building was not demolished. Maybe because the location of the building is not in the center of the town. It's almost like 3 kilometers away from the city. So nobody really cared about demolishing this building until one day our client drove by the site and he fell in love with the building at the very first moment he looked at it. This is the original condition of the inside of the building. The machine was already gone, so this is the empty space with the rough structures of the factory. And when I started the project, I had a very lucky opportunity to have a lunch together with some people. Right now, they're already old people, but they used to work in the factory 20 or 30 years ago when at their younger time. And after I had lunch with them, I got a very strong feeling when they talk about the experience of their working in the sugar mill factory, they feel proud of it. And some of them, this guy even cried. I saw his tears coming out. So this building is not only a physical heritage of the local area, but obviously it's also a emotional connection for the local people from their current time to their memory. So I think that's make this whole thing more meaningful. And normally when I started design, I used to go to the site for many times, very often, and then I use sketches to start establishing a kind of connection between architect and the physical site. Of course, this is for me, it's a very efficient way to understand, to learn from the site. And this is a series of sketches I did in the beginning of the project. And this is also very preliminary idea about the layout of the site. No matter what we do, I think there's one of the most important principles is that the original sugar mill building cluster is still in the center of the compound, and the new buildings will be flanking alongside, which still keep this dominating characteristic of the original sugar mill factory. I think it's a spiritual symbol of the site. This is the final layout of the master plan. So the cluster here is the original factory, sugar mill factory, and we have two volume actually as the new addition of the entire building cluster. This is the typical room volume, and this is the garden villa volume, which is also the guest room for the hotel. And in the middle, this entire old factory houses were transformed into some public programs like the library, the restaurant, the bar, etc. And right against the Lijiang River, we have a place with actually has an original truss structure standing by, and we transform this place into the swimming pool of the hotel. And this is the early sketch showing you the volumetric relationship, not only between this old factory and the new volumes of the architecture, but also the verticality of the natural karst mountain and this horizontality of the artificial architectural intervention of the site. And this is some draft models along the process, testing the material, testing the light. There's one important thing I like to share with you guys is the material, and together with the tectonic detailing of this building. This is the schematic sketch of the building facade. Because again, this building is dealing with a very important relationship between the old building and the new building. And for me, I think this is also a very critical issue in the current China, because over the past 30 years or even 40 years, the drastic urbanization process, the demand of the speed and the quantity really force many decision makers, they overlook the historical trees of our living environment, and we demolish many things actually without enough care. So in this particular project, we, of course, very important design strategy is that how we let this new building coexist with the old ones, and together establish a new harmony between them. And the old building is actually built by bricks and masonry structure. In the new building, we of course have to respect this kind of historical atmosphere, but we don't want to simply copy the old material and apply them into the new structure. We like to somehow test some the current technology, current material, but has a kind of consistent, subtle feeling between this new and old. They are belonging to the same family, but each of them represent their own time. So in this building, we actually use the concrete block, and it's a stacking kind of detail, and to have to extend the feeling of the brick, but to allow more light and more air to go through the building facade. But of course, we take a lot of time and energy to study this kind of new building material and detailing. And this is a bigger model we made in our office. It's not by concrete, of course. It's made by foam, because before this material really go to the execution procedure, we have to be able to test the opacity, the scale, to make sure we make the right design decision. So this is made by our own architect. But eventually we have to work with the manufacturer, and we spend almost like half a year to try to find a collaborator, but eventually we failed because of the budget limit, and also there are some technical problems that eventually we didn't find a solution. So the client actually made a decision. He opened up his own small factory right close to the site, and this is some pictures showing you in the early stage that the engineers and also the workers make some tests to start study into this kind of concrete hollow block material. And that's actually the factory, and the building at the distance is the construction site. And actually it's demonstrated he made a right decision, because first of all, the budget is under control because the factory belongs to him. And second of all, because eventually we have many kind of customized dimensions. For example, the corners and the edges of the facade, so he can easily manage to produce this kind of customized size of the concrete block, and also it actually saved the time as well. Yeah. And this is a series of pictures showing you how this concrete hollow block was casted. First of all, we have to make this PVC mold. And then this is a picture showing you how the workers laid the steel rod inside the mold. It's almost like a cast in place concrete, which actually the rods will provide the resistance of the lateral force as a tension member. And they actually invented the machine to push out the concrete block out of the plastic mold. And this is all by the local construction team, by the workers and by the engineer of the factory. So as an architect, we actually learn from them. And of course, we work with them. We let them know the design idea, but there's many technical input from them to allow that the entire process goes smooth. I will use a very short video clip to give you a sense about the entire construction process. This is in the very beginning, the client went to the site and they took the air balloon all the way up to the sky and shoot some videos and some pictures of the site. And this is actually the sugar mill factory. It's right here. Yeah. And he's the boss of the client. And that's the basement work. Piling. Casting the concrete. This is how they install the formwork. Because we have to try to reduce the number of the construction joint. So normally the formwork will be maximized in terms of the size. So you can see this is whole space as a one piece. And that's how they push out the concrete block out of the mold. And they invented the machine by themselves. cross smartly. This is when we tested strength of the block. Of course, we have structure here, but just want to double check how it feels like in terms of the structure strength. That's the topping of the structure. Well, that's the site here, and that's the landscape. Again, it's just really beautiful mountain water landscape. And that's the stacking process. He's the interior designer, the white shirt, Ju Bin. This is when they built the fence wall of the property. Some local technique. That's the extension of the leg. Waterproof of the base. Sometimes they have to knock off the broken pieces and replace with good ones. In some particular location, we have this bamboo installation because bamboo it's a very local vegetation. So this is the moment they try to install the bamboo. This is the interior designer and myself. We try to design the location of the trees in the complex. We don't have a landscape designer. The architect and the interior designer finish the landscape design. That's the central pump, which actually is the fire extinguished water resource, but we actually made it as a piece of landscape component. It's a pedal stone construction. He's our site architect. Stay there almost 3 years together with the workers to supervise the process of the construction. Planting bamboos. That's the first opening day, which was 2017. Firecracker. Surely they put it for like fire. Sorry, the war zone. Dramatic. But right after the opening day, the very second day, very next day, we encountered the big flood, which is the highest water level through the recent 50 years. So the compound was actually flooded. The hotel, see, this is the front driveway becoming river. You can even ride a boat on top of it. So the entire hotel closed for another 4 months and reopened at the end of the October in the same year, which is actually very unfortunate. But eventually the entire place become a very peaceful and tranquil compound. All right. And at the very end of my presentation, I will use, again, a very short video clip to show you what's the finishing condition of this hotel project. This is the finishing condition, like what it is today. This is some open terrace space along the new architecture volume. This is central, you can call it plaza, with the reflecting pond. And that's the old sugar mill, which is preserved. It's almost like a castle or like a cathedral, a very spiritual, even some mysterious kind of atmosphere. We have this kind of cutting pathway into this landscape water pond. And when you walk along it, your eye level will change and you will see different kind of water reflection because of the angle of your eyes. That's the old brick wall, juxtaposed with the new architectural intervention with the different material, but have a kind of consistent, very subtle feeling of these two material. That's the mountain and water. It's really beautiful surrounding. This is an outdoor hallway connecting the front desk to the typical room volume, sheltered by the concrete canopy. This is a continuous pathway carved in to the new architecture volume. And along the pathway, you will pass some open space, open terrace. So when you walk along the pathway, it's almost like you walk inside a carved stone or a carved mountain. That's the original design intention. And that's one of the open terrace along the pathway, facing a very beautiful natural stone across. This ivy start climbing onto the bamboo canopy. That's the balcony parts of the building. The balcony are facing to the mountain, while the corridor facing the driveway. That's another angle you can look at this old sugar mill structure, like a cathedral. That's the corridor of the new building. Actually, the facade is, I explained earlier, made of this concrete block and the local stone stacking detail. So can really filter the light. You have this kind of very peaceful light atmosphere inside the space. That's the central landscape pond. And this is the truss I mentioned earlier, right facing the Lijiang River and being transformed into a swimming pool, looking at this mountain contour in the distance. That's the Lijiang River. This is when you look back on top of the Lijiang River, looking at the compound of the hotel. That's old brick of the sugar mill. There is a village, the road. So this is angles you look at the building from the village. This is the angle from the driveway. So the light coming from inside can really make this entire volume like a lantern at the night. All right. So I guess this is I finished the presentation today. Thank you very much. And hopefully we can see each other in person after the pandemic. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.